Do you remember unboxing a brand new video game? For a lot of people, the ritual was sacred. You'd get the game, rip off the plastic in the car, and the very first thing you'd do before the disc ever touched your console was get entranced by that little booklet. It was packed with cool art, hidden story details, and tips to get you started. The car ride home was part of the whole experience, a sneak peek into the game's world before you even loaded it up. But now you open a new game and you're greeted with this, an empty plastic box. Maybe there's a slip of paper with a warranty or a QR code staring back at you. That physical connection to the world you were about to jump into is just gone. It feels like something's missing, a silent downgrade to the physical games we still pay a premium for. So what happened? What killed the video game manual? And while we were busy enjoying the convenience of in-game tutorials, what did we actually lose? Join me as we take a look at the rise and fall of one of gaming's most underappreciated and now missed artifacts. Once upon a time, game manuals were an essential part of gaming. In the early days of home consoles, through the 70s and 80s, game manuals were non-negotiable. The blocky pixels on the screen could only tell you so much. A game like Atari's Adventure was just a bunch of squares and simple shapes. Without the manual, you wouldn't have a clue that you were a knight on a quest for an enchanted chalice, not just a dot in a maze. The manual was the storyteller, the world builder, and the artist that filled in the huge gaps left by the tech of the time. Publishers back then knew a good booklet was powerful. At the height of its popularity, Atari set an incredible standard. In 1982, its game Yar's Revenge came with a full-on comic book explaining the backstory and how to play. This was an entirely separate piece of media to consume alongside the video game. Other publishers like Activision and Imagic developed their own unique styles. Imagic's manuals were known for dramatic, almost movie-like photos of starships and dragons, while Activision famously dedicated pages to the programmers themselves, turning them into mini-celebrities and putting a human face on the code. The quality of a manual used to mean something. It represented a different class. It was a direct sign of a publisher's confidence in how well they were doing financially. When a company was successful, the manuals were gorgeous, full-color books on high-quality paper. But if a publisher was struggling, the manual was the first and clearest sign, becoming a cheaply printed sheet. This all led to what many consider the true golden age of the instruction manual. The late 80s through the early 2000s, covering the NES, SNES, PlayStation, and PlayStation 2 generations. During this time, the manual turned into an actual art form. They became dense, illustrated pieces of media that stretched the game beyond the TV. Think about the manual for The Legend of Zelda on the NES. Yes, it told you how to play the game, but it also introduced you to the massive kingdom of Hyrule, its legends, and the creatures you'd meet. It even gave you a partial map with empty spaces, inviting you to fill it in yourself and making the manual an interactive part of the game. The publisher wanted to give you the tools to make your journey unique and to write your own, or take Secret of Mana for the Super Nintendo. Its manual was the treasure chest. It had detailed character bios, amazing illustrations of every enemy, and even a walkthrough for the first few hours of the game. It had pictures of handmade figures of the main characters and came with the huge, beautifully illustrated world map poster. You could spend hours just looking at the art, studying enemy stats, and planning your journey. It made the world feel real and huge before you even stepped into it. This trend kept going and got even better in the 3D era. The manual for 1998's Metal Gear Solid was a masterclass in world building. For a game that already had a complicated spy story, the manual was your official briefing file. It gave a deep backstory on Solid Snake, profiles on other characters, and story details that were key to understanding the plot. Some versions even presented this info as a comic book, a free origin story that perfectly matched the game's cinematic feel. And then, there's what many think of as one of the last truly great video game manuals. 2005's God of War, a booklet that gave you a crash course in Greek mythology. It laid out Kratos' tragic backstory with dramatic flair, profiled the gods you were about to take down, and explained the combat system in brutal detail. It perfectly set the stage for the revenge story that was about to begin. These manuals acted as story extensions, art books, and world guides all rolled into one. They created a physical connection to the game, an artifact from the world you were about to spend dozens of hours in. The ritual of reading it on the way home got you hyped for the adventure to come, and for a long time, it was a promise that was always kept. The death of the game manual had a slow, gradual fade out. A death by 1,000 cuts caused by a perfect storm of new tech, changing game design, and as always, money. The change started in the mid-2000s, right when the manual was at its most artistic, and it happened so quietly that many of us didn't notice until it was too late. The first, and probably the biggest killer of the paper manual, was the rise of in-game tutorials. As graphics got better and game engines became more powerful, developers could finally show players how to do things instead of just telling them. Instead of reading about a double jump in a booklet, you were now guided through it in the game's first level. A voiceover or a prompt on the screen would tell you exactly what buttons to press right when you needed to. And honestly, this was a better way to teach. Tutorials became interactive and fit seamlessly into the game. Games like Portal 2 protected this, creating opening levels that were so intuitive they didn't even feel like a lesson, they were just a natural part of the game. From a publisher's point of view, if you were already building a full tutorial into the game, printing a separate manual started to seem pointless. Why pay to print information that was already being delivered better on screen? The second big factor was that control schemes became standardized. In the early days, every console and every game could have a completely different button layout. The manual was important just to figure out how to move around. But by the time the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Wii came out, everyone had pretty much agreed on the basics. Left stick moves, right stick controls the camera, face buttons are for actions, and triggers are for aiming and shooting. This layout became so common that a detailed diagram wasn't really needed anymore. Now this info is just tucked away in the menu, making a printed guide even less useful. Thirdly, the way games were designed started to change. Manuals were great for linear games, but the rise of huge, open-world sandbox games changed everything. How do you write a step-by-step manual for a game like Skyrim or GTA, where the player's journey is almost completely up to them? A printed booklet just couldn't keep up with the thousands of different paths and unique situations that happen in modern open-world games. The manual, which was once a helpful guide, was now outmatched by these huge digital worlds. The fourth, and maybe most disruptive change, was the boom of digital games and the internet. The launch of services like Steam, Xbox Live Arcade, and the PlayStation Network was the beginning of the end for physical games. While physical games still made up a lot of sales into the late 2010s, today they're a small fraction of the market. If a huge chunk of your audience is downloading the game directly to their console, they won't get a physical manual anyway, so developers have to make sure the game can be understood without one. The internet also offered a much better and more convenient alternative to a printed book. Why flip through pages to find one piece of information when you could just type your question into a search engine? Online communities, forums, fan-made wikis, and a little site called YouTube quickly became the new source for all game knowledge. If you were stuck on a level or a boss, you could watch a video of someone else beating it. If you wanted to know the stats of a weapon, a wiki would have it all laid out. This massive and instantly searchable web of information made the old paper manual feel like a dinosaur. And the most boring and frustrating reason of all, money. Printing millions of full-color, multi-page booklets and shipping them across the globe is expensive. As game development and marketing budgets ballooned into the hundreds of millions, publishers started looking for any way to cut costs and boost profits. And here's the unfortunate truth. Even when manuals were at their peak, a lot of players just didn't read them. They were often tossed aside, lost, or thrown out. Publishers saw the numbers. They realized that if a big part of the player base was ignoring these expensive booklets, and if tutorials and the internet were already doing the job of teaching, then why keep paying for them? From a business perspective, the instruction manual was an easy thing to cut. It was a nice to have that couldn't be measured on a spreadsheet, and in the world of profit and loss, the bottom line always wins. All of these things together slowly and silently erased a beloved part of the gaming ritual, leaving a hole in the game case. In a world of empty game cases, open a new game and you'll find the disc on the right, and on the left, where a colorful booklet used to be, there's nothing. Just plastic clips designed to hold a manual that isn't there. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll get a single piece of paper with health warnings or an ad for the season pass. This is the new normal. For major releases, physical game manuals are pretty much extinct. Digital documents are now the standard. The most famous example of this shift is Grand Theft Auto 5. Instead of a thick, printed manual like its older siblings, Rockstar released the manual as a free 100-plus page app for phones and tablets. This was a cool, modern solution. It was searchable, convenient, and better for the environment, but it totally disconnected the manual from the physical game, turning it into just another app on your phone. Other companies just toss a PDF of the manual into the game files, especially on PC, but these are often so hidden that most players don't even know they're there. Nowadays, opening a modern game case just feels cheap. It feels empty. That moment of excitement, of finding extra art and story details, has been replaced by a reminder of what's gone. It turns the physical purchase from a special item into just a box with a disc. But we didn't lose everything for nothing. We gained a ton of convenience. In-game tutorials, when they're done well, are great at teaching you how to play. And being able to instantly look up anything about a game online is a resource that you could have only dreamed of in the 90s. You'll never get permanently stuck again. The collective knowledge of the entire internet is there to help. Learning to play a game is in many ways easier and less frustrating than before. But what did we lose in the trade? We lost art. Manuals were often filled with exclusive artwork you couldn't find anywhere else. The illustrations in the Mega Man or Street Fighter manuals gave us expressive versions of characters who were just a handful of pixels on screen. This art helped define the whole look and feel of a series. We lost story. Before long cutscenes became the norm, the manual was a huge part of the storytelling. It gave you the prologue, the character bios, and the world building that made your actions in the game feel important. And maybe most importantly, we lost that tangible connection. We lost the physical piece of our digital worlds. In an era where most of our games are just licenses on a hard drive, the manual was a real, physical part of the game that you actually owned. You could hold it, feel the paper, see the crease in the spine from reading it over and over. It was a souvenir from your journey through Hyrule or Tamriel. We're in an age where we're shifting from owning a product to licensing a service. We traded a piece of the game's soul for a more efficient, streamlined, but ultimately less personal experience. And while you can't deny the practical benefits, it's hard not to feel like something precious got left behind. And just when it looked like the instruction manual was gone for good, new things began to happen. A new wave of developers, many of whom grew up with these classic manuals, started to see their potential again as a core part of the game itself. In the world of indie games, the manual is making a comeback. One of the best examples of this is the 2022 game Tunic. Tunic is an action-adventure game that's heavily inspired by Zelda, but its genius is in its main mechanic, the instruction manual. When you start, you get no tutorial, no on-screen hints, and almost all the text is in a language you can't read. You're lost, confused, and have no idea what to do. Your only guide is the game's manual, which you have to find and put together page by page. These glowing pages are scattered all over the world, and each one you find adds to your in-game booklet. The manual itself is a work of art, designed to look exactly like a classic 90s game manual, complete with illustrations, maps, and handwritten notes in the margins. The coolest part is how it all works. You don't find the pages in order. The first page you find might be page 10, giving you a vague idea of your goal. Hours later, you might find page 2, which finally explains what your health bar is. The game's mechanics are revealed to you as you explore. You might play for hours without knowing you can upgrade your stats until you find the page that shows you how. Learning how to play the game is the game. Finding all the pages is required to unlock the true ending, making it a key part of the experience. Tunic shows that when used creatively, manuals still have a place in our modern world. Another great example is The Banished Vault, a complex sci-fi strategy game. The developers knew their game had a steep learning curve with some weird rules, so instead of a boring tutorial, they designed the whole game around a manual. This manual is available in the game as a free PDF, and even as a physical book you can buy. And it does a few things. It has tutorial scenarios that walk you through the basics of moving your ships and gathering resources, but it's also a complete reference guide for everything else in the game. When you run into a new problem or a confusing button, the game encourages you to pause and check the manual, just like you would with a complicated board game. By making the manual a core part of the experience, The Banished Vault trusts you to learn at your own pace and makes learning itself a fun part of the strategy. The problem was never the manual itself, but what it was being used for. A simple list of controls isn't needed anymore. By using the manual format to share lore, create puzzles, or serve as a physical reference for a complex game is where it still has value. They're turning the manual from a simple instruction booklet into a piece of interactive art. The story isn't over. As we've seen, a new chapter is being written. Creative developers are proving that the manual doesn't have to be dead. They're reminding us that those little books were never just about instructions. They were about pulling you into the world. They were about discovery. They were a real piece of the universe we were so excited to visit. The ritual of the car ride home might be a thing of the past, but maybe we can rest easy knowing the spirit of the ritual, the joy of discovery, and the deep connection to a game's world is being kept alive in new and exciting ways.